Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U. And today we're going to be doing an analysis of The Diplomat. Now, if you haven't heard anything about this show, let me let you know up front. It came out within a couple of days. It hit #1 for Netflix. It's been in the top 10 in 86 different countries. There's a whole bunch of reasons why it has been successful. And we're going to explore some of those today, because what you want to be doing is you want to be understanding what is it that makes these shows great, right? This is not a thing like I had somebody the other day, go into critic mode about some show that we were talking about. And the problem was, even though he could be a critic, he couldn't write at the level that they were writing at. And maybe that's why he was being a critic. Maybe he was feeling that weakness and felt that he wasn't good enough or that kind of thing. But just so you know, that's only a matter of having the right skills and making the right decisions, which we will talk about later on. So let me say a couple of things about this show before we jump into it. It was created by Deborah Kahn. Right? You'll see she had 88 episodes of West Wing. She had 184 episodes of Grey's Anatomy. She knows what she's doing. There is a lot to learn from in a show like this. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for trying to prove that something is spectacular or my taste is better than yours or any of those kinds of things, because that's just nonsense. What I'm looking for is, what can we learn? What will have every one of us be better writers? What will give you a better chance at success, right? And so every time we do one of these, my hope is that you learn something that you apply immediately, and that you're able to then, translate that into your writing, into your skills, and into who you are as a writer from that point on. So let's just jump into this here. Today, we're going to be talking about, first, I'm going to take you through the 5-star model for binge-worthy TV, because that's the basis of all of this. And it's the basis of the level at which TV is being written right now. Second, we're going to talk about how do you build intrigue into a drama. This show is, some people might call it a political thriller. I'd call it a political drama. And it's, either way, it's a valuable show. Then we'll talk about how do you create relationships that are filled with subtext, because a lot of what makes this show amazing are a couple of the key relationships that just have us be engrossed in those. And finally, we'll talk about the upcoming binge-worthy TV program that may be a major opportunity for you to take your writing to a whole new level, and who knows what could happen with that. So let's jump into it. Our characters, and I'm pointing this out right now for a reason you'll see in just a second. This is Ambassador Kate Weiler. It's Kerry Russell playing the role. I'm going to refer to her as Kate. So I'm going to put up 3 characters that I'm specifically going to refer to in specific ways. All the others I'll refer to by their position. This is her husband. His name is Hal Weiler, and I'm going to refer to him as her husband so you don't get confused and think I'm talking about myself. And then there's Stuart, who is Kate's second in command, who is pretty much, anytime she's on the screen, one of these 2 guys is on the screen with her for the most part. So those are the main characters I'm going to talk about. On all the others, I don't want to add confusion by saying names that you haven't heard if you haven't seen this show. So just wanted to introduce you to those so that you'll know where we're going and what we're doing. So let's talk about this 5-star model for TV. We developed this a couple of years ago when we were looking at, what are the best TV shows on the air? And we were specifically looking for the ones that were in the top 1%. And you've seen all of those shows, like Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad. We looked only at the ones at the very top and said, you know what? The streamers are going to want to duplicate those shows, right? When they have something that is in the top 1%, that means it beat out the other 99%. And it also means that's how they're going to be making decisions in the future. Those shows make them more money. They create more success for them. They make more of a difference. So it's important that, that we create from there and that we know what did they do to make those successful. So let's start. First, they have a big picture hook. And this is incredibly important because in general, this is the thing that's going to get your project in the door. We're talking about a big hook that engages us, as in the high concept of the show. We're talking about a great title. We're talking about a unique world that we want to explore, an engaging journey overall that keeps us compelled to go on that journey and to watch episode after episode after episode. So this is the first decision that you want to make. And it's, in my opinion, it may be the most important decision you make of everything you make. All the decisions you make having to do with your project, this one's right at the top. Second, then it's about intriguing character, which I would say is your second most important decisions. Those characters are who we're going to live with, right? They're who we're going to engage with. And the difference between an amateur writing versus a prose writing is that those characters have more under the surface than they do on the surface. I was a judge at a couple of contests a couple of years ago, and what I would say was on both of these, almost all the semifinalists missed both of those. They had characters that operated on 1 or 2 layers when they needed 4 or 5. They completely missed the big picture hook almost entirely. Every one that I read, with the exception of the ones that were the winners. And besides that, though, what they had was pretty good writing. It's just these key decisions, if they're missing, you've already shot yourself in the foot. So that's important to understand. On intriguing character, I really mean the word intriguing. This is the key word there. That means you're going to have more beneath the surface than on the surface. It means they have secrets, they have moral issues, they have unpredictability. There are times when they're doing things that cross the line, even if they are good people. So you want to be careful about the old paradigm and not do this one. The old paradigm was people thought it was all about likability. This was the 1990s, the early 2000s. People spent a massive amount of time trying to make their characters likable. And I'd say likability is now number 4 on that list. Number 1 is right up here, intrigue. If you can make a character intriguing, no matter how likable they are, we're going to pay attention, right? If you take a look at the show Succession, and just if you've never watched it, just watch the first couple episodes, you will see a whole bunch of intriguing characters that are not likable, right? And that was a big thing when that show came out. People were saying, first they were saying, is this show going to be able to stay because they don't have likable characters? But then they were saying, wow, I really don't like those characters, but I can't look away. And that makes a difference. So there's multiple levels on which characters exist. Number 4 is likability. Start intrigue right now. How do you make your lead characters intriguing? And we'll talk about how they did that here. Number 3 now is empathy/distress. And this empathy/distress is the second thing that absolutely has to be there if you want people to be constantly deeply engaged in your show, right? On some of the shows that I would say are best at this, I've found myself thinking about and worrying about those characters days later. I'll be in the middle of actually doing work, and in my unconscious, there's a whole conversation about what's going to happen with this character. It's not just the cliffhanger that caused that. It's the level of empathy they created. And one of the big ways you create empathy is by creating distress, right? So every time you put a character in distress, you increase the chance that we're going to feel empathetic towards them. And again, what that means is your show needs to build in distress. There absolutely are some light shows out there that are well done, and I'm not saying that you can't make something happen with that, but I would say the more you have us feel distress and empathy for the lead characters, the more committed we're going to be to their world and their life. Number 4 then is layers and open loops. Two kinds of layers. You could have plot layers, or you could have character layers. Having layers means we suddenly discover something that changes pretty much everything. It's like if you go back to, and I'll just use a feature film for this because it's the easiest example to go to. If you go to The Sixth Sense, right? That movie, we've got a psychiatrist who is helping this kid who sees dead people, and the psychiatrist doesn't believe him in the beginning, and we go through this whole story. The psychiatrist is, racking his brain trying to figure out, how do I help this kid? And we're deeply engaged in it until we get to the end, and we suddenly discover a new layer. The psychiatrist died in the opening scene, and he's one of the dead people that this kid sees, right? That layer changes our whole way we think about that character. It has us see, wait a minute, this whole thing's been going on the entire movie and we didn't see it. It has us reevaluate everything that's been going on. Like if you think about it, you go back to the very first scene where Malcolm's sitting across the street and the kid comes out the door, looks over at Malcolm and runs, right? That kid sees whatever wound caused that person's death. He sees Malcolm has a hole in his stomach. And there's blood all over him. That's what the kid sees, right? So we reevaluate the entire story based upon having a layer being revealed. In TV, you need layers, and you need to become a master of layers, because they're going to be some of your cliffhangers, right? There are going to be things that we get to a certain point and everything changes, and now we go back and completely reevaluate, or it prompts us seeing the entire thing that just happened in a different way. There's a show out right now called Queen Charlotte, where you see what looks like this new king who has married Charlotte, and on their wedding night, he chooses not to stay with her. And it looks like something terrible has happened, that she has been brought into a loveless marriage. And then what we find out on the 3rd episode is there's something completely different going on. I won't say what it is. I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but there's a layer there that now has us understand why he's behaving the way he's behaving, changes our whole view towards him, towards her, towards the relationship. And they take at least one episode to walk us through that layer so that we can see what's really happening. It's actually brilliant writing. So that kind of stuff is worth looking at. Open loops, by the way. This means you create a question in the present that causes us to look into the future episodes and wonder, how's this going to be resolved? How is this question going to be answered? Are they going to kiss? If you look at look at the TV show Lost. They actually created that question in the first episode. Are these two going to be together? And I think it took 4 or 5 seasons before they finally actually kissed. But that question was on our mind the whole time. They created this amazing open loop, and then we revisited it over and over and over, and we wondered about it over and over and over. They created a whole bunch of other open loops that had us come back over and over. What open loops do is it forces us to think into the future, thereby causing us to want to see those future episodes. So a lot of people think it's just about the cliffhanger, right? What's going to have them go from episode 1 to episode 2 immediately, even though they need sleep, right? The audience is in their homes watching. What's going to create that moment? It's not just the cliffhanger. It's open loops, it's layers, it's the empathy, distress, it's these intriguing characters, right? There's a whole bunch of things going on here that are designed to cause us to want to watch episode after episode after episode. And here comes the biggest. Inviting obsession. This is your job. I remember having a conversation with a writer who was like, well, I don't want to manipulate my audience, and I don't want to, have people feel like they have to watch this. And it's like, no, that's actually your job. Your job is to write something that has people do anything that it takes to be able to watch these episodes. Your job is to set it up so that if it's 2 a.m. and I've got to get up at 6, and we get to the end of this episode, I'm really, truly considering giving up another hour of sleep to watch your show. Because if you can create that level of obsession in today's market, the streamers are going to love you and audiences are going to love you. Think about how many times you've seen somebody on Twitter or Facebook say, hey, I've got the weekend free. What should I binge watch? Right? They're saying, tell me a show I'll be obsessed with, right? That I can just forget about my life and just come in and live this show. So this is incredibly important, being able to create obsession. And we have a whole bunch of different skills and techniques for being able to do that. That came again from us analyzing the very best of the top 1% shows. So now let's take a look at this show. So building intrigue into a drama. I'm talking about this because a lot of times I'll say to people, they'll pitch me their project, and for one reason or another, if we're in a class together or something like that, and I'll say that project needs more intrigue, and they'll go, well, I'm intrigued, and it's like, well, of course, because it's your story, and you know all these deep things that are going on that the audience doesn't know. Our job is to build in the kind of intrigue that would get somebody who doesn't care obsessed with your show, right? So that becomes very, very important. So here's what intrigue is, basically. There is something hidden, usually underhanded, that the audience must search for and discover. Now, let me just show you a couple of things here. Something hidden doesn't mean that the audience has no idea what it is, right? Because if you're going to come down here and say they must discover this, and they must search for it, and they must discover it, you've got to give them some kind of clues. You've got to have them wondering what's happening. You've got to set them up to go on that discovery journey, right? So first you have something underneath the surface, something hidden, something that they're wondering about, and we'll talk about a few in a moment, and this will make more sense. Second, it creates this journey of them needing to discover what it is. And then third, it's usually underhanded. There's usually something about that that's underhanded for some reason. It could be underhanded to the degree where it's the thing that's going to destroy the world, and we've got to solve it. We're watching James Bond or something. Or it could be underhanded to the point of just somebody lying to their best friend because they want to get her into this surprise party, right? And so that's a very, very light version of underhanded. They're not telling the truth. Of course, that one will be forgiven. The one that blows up the world, not so much. So if we look at this show, right off the bat, first thing, who bombed the warship, right? The opening scene is this warship. It's a British warship, and it is bombed. And at that point, we're told 25 sailors may have been killed. The number keeps going up as we go from that point on. But the leaders, the president of the US and the prime minister, both blame the Iranians. And it looks like they're jumping to conclusions. So first, the question is, who bombed them? If it wasn't the Iranians, who was it, right? Something underhanded has happened. We don't know who did it. Who was it? And then the question is, could it be that the prime minister is benefiting from this politically? Because he immediately, for the first time apparently in his career, gets a major bump in the polls. And suddenly he's seen as this amazing, badass leader. At minimum, he's benefited from it politically. The question is it more than that? We'll see, right? So it's created this, we know something, right? Because a lot of times, again, what people think intrigue is vagueness. I don't think it is. We know something. We saw that warship get bombed, right? We know the leaders are blaming the Iranians. And then there's this question over here that's kind of lingering, that has shown up in kind of a light way. People are just saying some things. It looks like he's taking advantage of it. Or maybe he's just trying to do a good job. We don't know at that point. Then, why did Kate suddenly get made ambassador? What's that about? Right? If you look at the beginning of the show, and I'm going to give you a whole bunch of spoilers here, but I'll tell you, it'll be worth seeing all of this, because then when you watch it, and I'm only going to talk about the pilot, by the way, so you won't have spoilers after that. But then when you watch that pilot, these things will be highlighted. They'll stand out for you. But, I think we're in the fourth scene or so, and she finds out she's been made ambassador, right? They thought that they were coming there because her husband is the ambassador, but she's been made ambassador, and no one seems to know why. Then it turns out there's this conspiracy going on. 6 people know that she is being considered for the VP position, right? The vice president of the US. Turns out there's going to be a major scandal about like millions of dollars that have disappeared, and that VP is going to be out. So they're considering Kate for that position. 6 people know about that, but not Kate. So the question becomes, who are the 6 people, and why isn't she in the loop? Why aren't they telling her this? So let's continue. The Secretary of State wants to fire her on her first day. All right. Now that's just something that's happening in front of us, but why? Why isn't he willing to give her even a day? Why does he want to fire her now? Turns out he's not one of the people who knows that she's being considered for the VP position. So there's something else going on. What's that about? Right? So this kind of thing creates intrigue. We're wondering what's going on. Why is this person after her? What is this about? Her husband is in on the scheme of her becoming VP, but he's not considering her in the situation. He's not telling her. He's not, you could say he's preparing her, but he's not really. He's like having her do the right things in the moment. What's his, what's he getting out of this? And there is something he's getting out of this that's really important. We'll talk about that in a second. And then the cliffhanger at the end of the episode, someone kidnaps her husband, right? And the question is why? First, well, actually, it's who kidnapped him and why did they just do that? And by the way, it implies a whole bunch of subtext and intrigue that's already gone on. The person who basically did the kidnapping is a woman who was talking with him just a minute ago about hemming up his suit and making him look better when he's in front of the cameras. And now she sticks a needle in his neck and suddenly he's out, right? So she's been there the whole time. That means somehow she got in on the inside. It also means she's part of a bigger group. What is going on? And why is he being kidnapped? What's this whole thing about? So that cliffhanger takes us now to the thriller level that we were talking about earlier. So now let's talk about relationships. And how do you create relationships that are filled with subtext? I think for a lot of people, if you say it needs more subtext, they're already lost. This is one of the things you need to master if you're going to do TV. You need to master intrigue. You need to master subtext. There's a whole bunch of other skills that you absolutely need to master. But let's talk about relationships that are filled with subtext. So relationship subtext means there's a deeper meaning that the audience perceives, right? A lot of times when people, again, when I say subtext, what they do is go to vagueness. And they create all these vague situations and you can't tell what's going on. And it's not, vagueness is not something that draws an audience in. Vagueness has them start thinking about, what are we going to eat tonight? Vagueness has them move to another channel or another streamer. So people aren't looking for vagueness in your script. They're looking for subtext. They're looking for intrigue. They're looking for all of these. There's a deeper meaning that the audience perceives. We know something's going on beneath the surface. It might originally be intrigue, and then once we know it, it becomes subtext, but we'll keep going with this. It's a deeper meaning the audience perceives that isn't being spoken about. Sometimes it is, but not always. We're perceiving it whether it's spoken about or not. And in this case, it's a deep part of the relationship. So I hope that made sense. Now let's go look at it. These two, by the way, they're estranged, but they must work together. So we know they've got something going on over here. And we're perceiving that, by the way, when they're working together. That's just an easy version, but here, let me give you the real one. They decided on a divorce before the show started, and they're not telling anyone, right? You can tell from the beginning that there's something going on between them. They clearly have been together for a while. They clearly know each other. They know each other's tells. They know what's important, what's not. They know when to talk, when to shut up, right? All of those kinds of things. They have these patterns that go with somebody who's been in a relationship. And then it turns out they're getting a divorce, and they're hiding that from everyone else. So it's something that's hidden. As soon as we know this, from that moment on, every interaction in that relationship, this is what we're thinking. These two are coming to a close. How is it going to happen? Right? So they have this functional relationship that is teetering between romance and separation, or maybe I should have done it the other way, separation and romance. For the most part, they're moving towards separation. At some point, the plan is going to be revealed, and you'll find out about that. That's probably in episode 3 or 4. We're absolutely worth watching to get to that point. But for the most part, they're moving towards separation, but they have these moments where it's like, okay, they still care for each other. There's still something there, but she's committed to separation. And that's it. He, and this is another piece of the subtext in their relationship, he knows she's up for the VP spot, but he's hiding it from her. Now, from an intrigue perspective, we're saying, why? Why is he hiding it? What's that about? But from a relationship perspective, this is also present. As soon as we find out she's up for the VP spot and that he knows, right? It's like now the things he's telling her to do make more sense. You know, he's preparing her from that perspective to be able to come up to the task, to be able to deal with things in a certain way, because they're meeting world leaders and he knows she's going to be a world leader very soon. Now, by the way, she's an incredibly capable woman. She knows absolutely what she's doing. She knows how to deal with things, how to navigate things. There are certain things that she is significantly better at than he is, and certain things that he is better at than she is. But she's not like a fish out of water in this situation. She's just like a fish that just got dumped into a bigger pond. And he is a loose cannon, and it constantly causes her problems. And you'll see even in the very first episode, there are situations where he's causing a problem, and basically what he's doing is he is really good at manipulating people and at getting people to do things and at playing the political game and at working behind the scenes and at setting things up and those kinds of things. And he does it without talking with her. So he's been used to him being the ambassador and her being the person who is the assistant, essentially, the one who is setting him up for things. Now, a couple other things here. He wants the relationship to continue. She doesn't. And we know this from early on, and it shows up in many of their interactions. You can see he would like them, to at least be somewhat close, and she's pulling away, kind of thing. They need to be together. It's not a creepy thing. It's just these two people have made a decision, and she is 100% in favor of it, or let's say 95% in favor of it, and he is 40% in favor of it. And then this is the major power shift I was talking about a moment ago. He was the ambassador, and now she gets the title of ambassador. And what that means really is that, it's like suddenly they're in opposite places. Up until then, he was the one who was on stage. She was preparing him. He was the one who was taking the actions out in the world and getting the credit. And she was the one who was maneuvering things from behind the scenes. Now, suddenly, we're in the opposite position. And, he's in a different place. And that power shift, that's hard for a lot of people to take, right? It's like, a lot of people, when they've been in power, how do you deal with that? How do you now become the one who is serving instead of being served, so to speak? And then he's constantly scheming, which, of course, causes her some serious problems. But she admires his skills, and you'll hear in there are points where she talks about his ability to do things, in a political environment is way beyond hers. To be able to create and get people engaged and involved and being part of the schemes and all of those kinds of things, he's a master at that. But now he just doesn't have the power that goes with it. So it's, instead of causing him problems, it's causing her problems. Now, if you look at this, all of these are about the subtext that's under the surface. While, yes, every once in a while they mention some of these things, the truth of the matter is Most of it is she could give him a look and we get, okay, all right, he can't do that, right? She could just say one thing and his plan just went out the window. At one point, he goes and he meets one of the leaders of the Tory party, or that was one of the leaders, and is going to bring him over to her. And her team chooses to have her evacuated rather than be in that particular spot in front of the cameras, right? So he's causing her problems, but he's doing what he normally does. He's still being who he is, but it's causing those problems, which are part of their relationship now. So all of this is stuff that you want to be building in. Notice, like I went through just 7 different things, 7 different places. There is subtext built into this relationship in the first episode that we can easily identify. You want that. You want a reader in this industry to be looking at your pilot and saying, wow, I love how this writer built subtext in here that the audience is going to perceive, and they did such a good job of making the surface level natural while we're perceiving what's beneath the surface. So subtext and intrigue, these two, we talked about them today. This gives you at least kind of a chance to look at this. But let me talk with you about something else. The key to your success here. Because I think many people worry that they aren't smart enough or they aren't creative enough. And I think this shows up in a lot of decisions. Like when somebody is about to create a pilot and they can't figure it out and they just jump into writing the pilot. At one point, I had an audience and I asked everybody in here, how many people in here have written a pilot? There were about 60 people that had. I said, okay, let me just ask, how many of you wrote the pilot before you figured out your story, before you figured out what this whole thing was about? And probably 90% of them raised their hand, right? They just went right into writing. I'm going to say part of that is because they didn't know what they were doing. They weren't really sure. And I'm not saying it's not possible to do that, but I want you to be thinking this way. There are certain things that you need to discover. There are certain things that you need to understand, that if you're coming from those decisions, and we'll talk about this in a second, if you're coming from the best possible decisions, you would write that pilot in a completely different way. So we'll talk about that. But again, back to this. That's just one example. If when somebody thinks they're not creative enough or they're not smart enough, they have a tendency to either hold back or not put their stuff out there or not take the actions, or sometimes they just write from whatever pops into their mind. I'll tell you though, being smart enough and being creative enough is not the problem. And this is something we discovered along the way. Take the same person, same level of creativity, and you change the 2 things I'm going to talk about, and it changes everything for them. So here's what you need to write a great TV show. You need, number 1, great decisions. And this is 10 times more important than you think it is. When I was talking with, at one point I was interviewing showrunners. I asked one showrunner in front of an audience, I said, let me just ask you, how do you break a show? Which means, how do you create a brand new show? And he goes, yeah, we've done that 3 or 4 times. He says, what I usually do is, I come up with kind of the basic idea, the big picture hook, the concept. Those are my words, not his. He says, I come up with a basic idea. And then he says, I bring my team into a room and we sit and talk. And I said, how long do you talk for? He goes, oh, sometimes a week. And I'm like, okay, so you're not just talking about the weather, right? And he goes, sometimes we talk about the weather, but he says, no, what we're talking about is the main decisions of this show. He says, we're trying to figure it out. And I said, so are you writing things up on the whiteboard and those kinds of things during this period of time? And he goes, no. He says, all we're doing is trying to find the decisions before we start putting things on the whiteboard, right? And it's like, I'm going to tell you in a minute, I'll walk you through some of these things. The decisions you make are more important than the writing if you're trying to sell a script. Second thing that needs to be there is high-level skills, which means there's a difference between, if you just kind of know character and you've figured out a couple of things and you can write a character. And by the way, anybody can write a character, anybody can create a scene, anybody can write a pilot. But there's a difference between that versus when you know really truly what it takes to create a multi-layered character that is designed to operate over 5 seasons and is absolutely the right character for this show, right? That level of skill, being able to create in that situation, makes all the difference. And then what you do is you funnel the creativity you have through number 1 and number 2, right? You funnel that creativity through the great decisions you've made and through the high-level skills that you have. So in the midst of talking with all of those A-list screenwriters, I never experienced them having more creativity than some of our best writers. I never experienced that. They had pretty much the same level of creativity, but they had higher level skills and they made better decisions. And by the way, they made the decisions, most of them, before they wrote. And that is one of the keys, because again, if you say, like, let's say you say, hey, we're going to do this as a comedy, right? This show, if we were doing it as a comedy, just that one decision would change so many things about it. Really, so many things. It would change the situations. It would change things the characters said. It would change how they dealt with things. It would change how we set up things. It would change how we paid off things, right? We changed one decision and it changes almost everything in that show. Not everything, but about, at least half of what's in the writing. So those decisions, that's incredibly important. Now, I'm going to say you make the right decisions, you're halfway to success. I'll also say that in the midst of making those right decisions, you are figuring out the things that you're going to be creating, and you are figuring out what you're going to funnel your creativity through. So, like, let's go with this. Excuse me. Here was one decision that was made. Kate and her husband are hiding their upcoming divorce while working together to stop a possible war. So take a look at this just for a moment. There's so many things built into this decision. First, it's about Kate and her husband. So this is about their relationship and who they're going to be and, what kind of conflicts are going to happen between them and that kind of stuff. Second, they're hiding their upcoming divorce, which impacts a whole bunch of things. She's thinking, and he's thinking that, or she's thinking that if they just show up here, she's the ambassador, and at some point her husband leaves, and then there's a little bit of a scandal, and then finally they announce their divorce, everything's going to be fine, right? What he's thinking, though, to be honest with you, is that she's going to be the VP, and the VP, as the new nominee for VP, can't get a divorce. So he's actually thinking that by moving her towards being this VP, it's going to solve this possible divorce, right? Now, the other thing that this does is it creates all kinds of interesting interactions between those two. But now we've put this situation where if they don't work together, there's a possible war. So we raise the stakes like crazy on this part of it so that they have to act normal, even though they're getting a divorce. Now, let's take it a step further. Here's another decision. But just notice what that first decision did. Here's the second one. Kate's being tested to be the new VP, the new vice president of the US. She has no knowledge of this, but all the key players around her know. Now, let's just this one decision. First, what it does is it has us go, okay, this is why she's being put in this spot. She's being tested, right? And this is why, she's being thrown into the deep end right off the bat. And she's being watched. And it also means, because she's being tested, it means that every decision she makes is being put under a microscope, right? Also, it has this whole future that we are going to be looking forward to, creates a huge open loop that she's going to be possibly the new VP. Is she ready for that? Can she deal with that? Is it going to happen? Is she going to make a mistake that's going to kill that? All of that kind of thing. And then we add in all this subtext. She has no idea that this is going on. She doesn't know about it. She doesn't know why they're pushing her off into the deep end. She doesn't know what's going on behind the scenes, how other people are thinking, but all the key players around her do know. So this single decision creates all kinds of superior position for the audience, where we are going, we know what's going on for Kate, she just doesn't know, where we are watching these key players position her, move her around, make things happen, keep things from her, hide things from her, right? All of that stuff is happening because a writer made this decision. So this is why I'm saying these decisions, first, are more important, and second, really, if you get down to it, these key decisions make or break a show. It's the writing that has people come back. It's the writing that has them love you as a writer, but it's the key decisions that either get the show made or don't, or keep the show on the air or don't. These key decisions, you've got to get great at these. So that's why on this, if you're going to write great TV shows, number 1 and number 2, incredibly important. And by the way, these are easy to learn. This stuff is really easy to learn. It's just what most people do is they take their creativity and they funnel it through average decisions and average skills. As soon as you find out and learn the higher level skills, now you funnel that creativity through it. As soon as you make the higher level decisions, now you are funneling that creativity through those decisions, and you come up with so many things that you would have never seen before. These two, number 1 and number 2, are why the pros look like they're 10 times more creative than anyone else. It's not about being more creative. It's about what are they funneling that creativity through. So, So there's a second thing that I want to tell you on this. And I'll tell you this as we're walking through this binge-worthy TV class, but I want you to know something else that's happening right now. They say luck is preparation meets opportunity. And we have this thing happening in our industry that happens once every about 15 years. There's actually a writer's strike going on right this moment. The whole industry has basically been shut down again. We just came out of the pandemic where we were shut down for 2 years, plus or minus. We still hadn't caught up on the amount of projects that need to be on the streamers and need to be on television. And now we're back in another stall moment. This is one of those places, again, where preparation could meet opportunity. So here's what I'm suggesting here. Well, let's back up for a second. This program is designed for you to become a master at creating the kind of television that studios and streamers are looking for at this moment. It just comes down to the kinds of decisions you make and the skill levels that you have, right? So again, when you're creating, the decisions are more important than the writing, right? This one right off the bat, having the right concept that is a major hook could make the difference between whether anybody ever looks at a word of your writing or not. It could make the difference between whether your writing just stays at home or whether it ends up being something that makes it to the air. Another decision, looking deeper, building subtext, intrigue, and layers in. This is what we were talking about today, especially subtext and intrigue. Another decision, building in trust issues, conspiracies, shocking reveals, right? All of these cause an audience to be involved and emotionally engaged on multiple levels. And that makes a big difference for a TV series. Another decision, having multi-layered plots and characters, multi-layered characters that surprise us. These are 4 out of the 50 decisions that we're going to make. Now, this program it's a 5-month-long program. Where we are right this moment, if I was coaching you one-on-one, I would be saying, listen, right now, we are 3 to 5 months from the end of this strike. What if the moment this thing was over, when there is the biggest need we've had in probably 15 years, maybe more, for great projects, what if you were standing there with the best project you had ever written in your life and with higher level skills and the 50 most important decisions mapped out on this thing in a way that were designed to sell? That would be one of those moments where your preparation meets that opportunity and you may get incredibly lucky. So let me just walk you through this and you'll get a chance to see, some of the things that are built into this program. This is one of our promises. With every lesson, you're going to discover something new. And every one of these modules, there's 5 modules in 5 months. Every one of these modules has 10 to 15 lessons that came directly from me doing interviews with showrunners, with finance people, with A-list writers, and finding out how they did things. So module 1 is about designing your binge-worthy show, right? And this is about making the decisions. You're going to make the 50 most important decisions of your show. And we're going to do those before you write anything. And the reason we're going to do those before you write anything is because, first, that's what the showrunners do. And so I'm training you essentially to already know how to deal with people in this industry, to know how they think, to have done what the top people in the industry do. So you will make those decisions because those decisions are the ones that'll make your show great and increase the chance that you can make something happen with it. As I've said before, decisions are what cause your show to sell. So you will master those. Then in module 2, now you'll be creating your TV pitch Bible. And we're doing this before we jump into the pilot. Most people, again, would jump right to the pilot because they want to do the thing that's comfortable. They want to write. But we're doing this because this is a good business decision for you. And because what you're doing in the midst of creating this is the thing that will keep you from getting stuck from now on, right? You're going to be looking at 5 seasons and saying, how do I build that in, right? So what we did was I noticed, and you'll probably notice this too, if you Google TV Bible, a whole bunch of stuff will come up that's all pre-streamer. That is, and you'll look at them and you'll go, every one of these is different. I've had so many people say, I looked at 10 different TV Bibles and I'm now so confused, I can't figure out what to do. So what we did was, first I went to a friend of mine who's a showrunner, and I said, and she's a producer, I said, you've got 5 shows on the air right now. How are you making these decisions for like a TV Bible? I said, if somebody hands you a TV Bible, what do you do with it? And here's what she said. She said, the first thing I look for is it something I can hand to my funding source? And I was like, wow, I haven't heard that before. And she goes, the world has changed. She goes, I have a funding source. That company probably funds about 30% of the movies and TV shows that are out there for streamers. And she said, they want the TV Bible done a specific way. And I said, oh, So when you get a TV Bible, and she interrupted me at this point, and she said, most of the time I look at it and I go, I either have to pay somebody to rewrite this or I'm done right now. So I was like, would you be willing to share exactly what goes in that? And she said, yes. And she's a friend of mine. So I said, how would you feel about me talking with your funding source? I promise I'll never say their name. I promise I will not ask them for anything other than to understand what's in the TV Bible. And she was kind enough to set me up. So I did the interview with the funding source about what exactly do they need in that TV Bible. Now that means that once you go through this module, you are creating a TV Bible that is specifically what they need, that the producer can look at and go, wow, I can hand it right to my funding source. I don't have to rewrite it. That makes a difference. There are specific criteria that goes in there in a specific order, right? It is designed to make it easy for a decision maker to say yes, but also we make your TV Bible a page turner. And this is something else. It's like a lot of people, like I've seen so many bad TV Bibles that from good writers where they were just thinking they're just putting information in there. I'm going to tell you, I've been in enough of those meetings. What I learned early on was if they look at any line in my TV Bible, they get engaged, right? This is not something where it's okay to tell all kinds of details about the character that don't matter. You're not just filling in spaces or any of that kind of thing. Your whole purpose is to suck them in and have them go, oh my God, I read the TV Bible and I just had to make this. And we've had writers who have had producers that, like we had one writer who, she called me up one day and she goes, you're not going to believe what happened. And I said, what? And she goes, well, I got my TV Bible to this producer. I called him a month later and he hadn't even looked at it. So I asked when to call back and he said, give me a week. I called back a week later. He still hadn't looked at it. So I said to him at that point, I said, just read the first page. If you just read the first page, I will leave you alone. She goes, he hung up, called her back 5 minutes later, and he went, oh my God, this is an incredible project. He had read the first page. He got sucked in on the first page. He continued to be sucked in all the way through the rest of it. And at the end of it, he was like ready to make this show. Now, by the way, we then went through a series of interesting steps with him, but this was one of these things where her TV Bible was as interesting as her pilot. And that caused him to say yes. He then later on read her pilot and he was blown away. He brought her on as not only a writer, but also a producer on the project. So module 3. So now what you've got is you've made all the decisions and you have your TV Bible done. You've figured out what your first season is, what your first 5 seasons are. You know where this whole thing's going. Now we go back to the pilot and you're going to create a brilliantly complex pilot outline. This isn't a small thing. If you ever hope to be in a writer's room, you are going to need these skills. And a lot of people tell me, I don't like to outline. Again, I'm going to say that has to do with them not understanding outlining. Outlining is where you build in all this depth, you build in all this intrigue, you build in the key needs for the pilot. And again, the difference for many people is the outline is usually when I see scripts come into contests that I've judged before, they'll have like 2 different levels at which this pilot operates. And that's when they just wrote it kind of on their own. They just decided screw it, I'm just going to write the pilot. When you go through this process, your pilot will operate on 5 different levels. It will have tremendous depth. It'll have that intrigue built into it. Again, this is important. A great outline equals a great episode. Now, inside the writer's rooms, I'll tell you, I've asked about 15 showrunners this question. Compare these two numbers, the percentage of the time that you outline versus the percentage of the time that you write. And here's the basic thing that they've pretty much all told me. They'll say we spend, as a team, we'll spend 3 to 4 days outlining this episode. And then we will hand it to one writer who has 2 days to write it. Now, if you look at the actual numbers there, you've got 8 people spending, say, let's say 3 days, so 24 basic days worth of time versus one person spending 2 days to write it. Like it's crazy the difference. They spend so much more time outlining because they know that's what's going to make that episode great. So this is an incredibly important skill for you to have. Then in module 4, now finally we're going to write this pilot. And there's a bunch of things that go into this, but let me just tell you up front. You are going to make sure that it is intriguing from page 1. You don't have the luxury of a single page. You can't have a single dull page. Nothing. You're going to make sure that this pilot is designed to launch the entire show. That's its purpose, right? It's the inciting incident for the entire show. So there's a lot of important things that need to go into it. And the job is to create the binge-worthy experience from the first episode. At the end of that first episode, the moment that that we get to the end and the cliffhanger shows up, your audience should make the decision to watch the next episode and to watch really the entire season at that moment, right? Think of the times that you've done this. Think of the times that you've watched just a single pilot, and at the end of it, you went, oh my God, I have to watch every bit of this. That means they did this job really, really well. So, and then again, this pilot is going to deliver on all 5 different levels, which again is much deeper than a feature film. So there's a different way of thinking, a different way of writing, and a different skill set that you're going to be using for this. Let me say one other thing. In this module, a 30-day module, we're going to do 6 drafts of your pilot. And you're coming from that outline that already is an incredible outline. But the way we're going to do this is we're going to teach you what we call the high-speed writing rules. And this will be one of the most effective and valuable tools that you have as a writer. Because what it'll mean is if you're put in that spot and they say, here, we're going to hand you the outline, you have 2 days to write it. You'll be able to do 3, 4, maybe more drafts during that 2 days. You will be able to write at incredibly high speeds because you choose to and because you know how to. And this came from us interviewing TV writers who were operating on deadlines on a regular basis. They write at one speed normally when they're just loving what they're writing. But when they're writing under deadline, they multiply that times 3 or 4, and they're writing at a significantly faster speed. So you're going to learn how to do that. We're going to give you the exact model and step by step, and then you will apply that as you're writing that first draft so that from that point on, at any time, you will have mastered and know how to write at an incredibly high speed. Then it's about how do you market? And this is the big question a lot of people have. How do I get in those doors? It's impossible to get in those doors. Well, it's not impossible. There may be some doors that it's impossible, I got it, or that you'd have to have an agent or a manager, but there are actually a lot of doors that you can get in otherwise, and you can get in by yourself if you know what you're doing. So first thing here, we're gonna create the 4 types of pitches that you need. There are 4 kinds of pitches that you actually need. And we've been through the process. We've pitched projects before. I made a deal with the Mark Gordon Company on a TV series that I pitched in the room with the president of the company. They gave me 4 minutes. My whole pitch, I knew I had all 4 of these pitches designed, so I knew exactly what I was doing. As soon as they said, I have 4 minutes, I went, yeah, I can do that. Because I had a pitch that was designed for that, that was perfect for that. And by the way, that 4 minutes, the first minute of it's taken up with pleasantries. Hi, who are you? Where are you from? What have you been doing? Blah, 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 and then, so really you have about 1.5 minutes to pitch in that situation. So I had my pitch down. I knew exactly what I was doing. 3 minutes later, the president of the company said yes, and we moved into that project. And that makes a huge difference. Most people go into pitches, they kind of know what they're going to do, but they're also kind of winging it. What they don't know is how the producer makes their decision and why they shouldn't say most of the things they're saying. So you will learn all of this. You will know exactly how they're thinking, exactly what's important to them, how they make their decision, and exactly what to say in each of these types of pitches. This will make your pitches 10 times as compelling. It really will. You won't be saying things that will disqualify you. You'll only be pitching in a way that absolutely works for that producer or showrunner. Then we'll talk about how to get shows in the door so that you really do have a chance, and how to build your network of producers and managers over time. A lot of times people are thinking, oh, it's a one-shot thing. It's not. If you're saying the right things, if you're using the right kinds of pitches, if you're coming in with the right kinds of projects, over time, you are going to build a network of producers and managers that you can go back to with project after project after project. And that's our objective. But you can build this network in advance. So once you learn how to build this network, then it'll become something that you just kind of do on a daily basis. It's easy. We have figured out strategies that make it incredibly easy to, over time, build a very strong network, which gives you a real chance. So this program it's actually starting on June 12th. That gives you a little while to brainstorm concepts. And what I'm going to do, for those of you who sign up, we're going to send you 2 pre-lessons that are specifically on how do you create a great TV concept. And then with that, what I would request that you do is you brainstorm at least 1 or 2 concepts every day, and I'll make it really easy for you. So you can do that. You probably could sit down and brainstorm 5 or 10 right this moment, but brainstorm 1 or 2 concepts every day. By the time you get to the class, you'll then select the one you like the best and bring it in and run it through this whole program. Now, the other possibility is you could come in with a project you've already written and use this as a way of taking it to a whole new level. But in that case, you have to be open and willing to change things and to make sweeping changes. And if you're willing to do that, totally fine. The normal price on this program is $12.99. You guys know how we do things. In this case, I'm going to give you a special that is for the first 10 people that sign up. So the $12.99, that's the normal price. That's what it usually is at the point at which the class starts. The special today for the first 10 people that sign up is $6.99. That will save you $600 on this program. And I promise you, this program is absolutely worth it. It will change your writing. It will take you to a whole new level that you have never been at before. It will give you the chance to make the kinds of decisions you didn't even know were important. And it'll have you be somebody who, if you learn everything we're presenting and you end up talking with a manager or a producer, they will see you as somebody who is either a pro or very close to being a pro. You will know things that everybody else out there doesn't know. 95% of the people who are coming in this industry have no idea about most of what's in this program. So again, the special on that for the first 10 is $6.99. Again, that saves you $600. All you got to do is write this link down, bit.ly/BWTV-order. Put that in your browser, click return, go through the sign up process. And today we will send you the first of those 2 pre-lessons on creating concept. If you need a payment plan, you can do that. The payment plan on this is $120 a month for, I think it's for 6 months. It totals $720. So it's a little more because it costs us to be able to do that. But all you got to do on that one is just click bit.ly/BWTV-payment plan. And really, if you look at this whole thing totals up to about $4 a day. So for the price of a Starbucks coffee, you can get into this program, master high-level skills, and be standing at the right place at the right time when things settle down in this industry. So, I hope you come join us for this. I promise you, this is some of the best work we've done. The team that we had when we developed this program, we had 2 writers who were working in writers' rooms at that point. We had an executive at NBC Universal who takes pitches on a regular basis. So he knew what worked, what didn't work, what causes people to say yes. He was part of us designing those 4 different types of pitches, right? And at one point in here, you'll see an interview where he walks you through exactly what to do in a pitch meeting if you end up going to a studio or a streamer. So this will change your life. So if that's something you want to do, come join us. If you run in the first 10, you get in at this price. If you miss the first 10, listen, don't feel bad. The price will bump up, and I'm not sure how much. It'll bump up a couple $100. Just know it's absolutely worth it, even if you paid the full price. This program is an incredible program that you will absolutely love what it does for your writing. So with that, listen, I want to say thank you for being with me today. My hope is that every time we do anything like this, you get something valuable out of it. And I look forward to working with you. This is Hal Crosman with Screenwriting U, wishing you the very best with your writing. Bye-bye, everyone.